The acrid smell of burning circuitry filled the air as Jasper Novak picked his way through the sprawling junkyard on the outskirts of Neo-Portland. His weathered boots crunched over discarded microchips and shattered holoscreens, each step releasing small puffs of metallic dust. The setting sun cast long shadows across the piles of technological detritus, transforming the landscape into a maze of twisted metal and broken dreams. Jasper adjusted the strap of his salvage pack, his eyes constantly scanning for anything of value. At 32, he'd spent more than half his life as a scavenger, eking out a living by selling recovered tech to the highest bidder. It wasn't glamorous work, but in a world where megacorporations controlled every aspect of daily life, it was one of the few ways to maintain a semblance of freedom. As he rounded a particularly large heap of discarded androids, a faint glimmer caught his eye. Jasper froze, his hand instinctively moving to the stunner holstered at his hip. Years of experience had taught him that not everything in the junkyard was as dead as it appeared. "Hello?" he called out, his voice barely above a whisper. "Anyone there?" The glimmer pulsed again, stronger this time. Jasper cautiously approached, pushing aside a tangle of fiber optic cables. What he saw made him stumble back in shock. Half buried in the wreckage was a woman, or at least, something that looked like a woman. Her skin was a pale lavender, shimmering with an otherworldly iridescence. Delicate, fin-like structures adorned her temples, and her eyes, when they fluttered open, were a mesmerizing swirl of silver and violet. "Please," she whispered, her voice carrying a musical lilt unlike anything Jasper had ever heard. "Help me." Jasper hesitated for only a moment before springing into action. He carefully cleared away the debris pinning her down, revealing more of her alien form. She was tall, easily over 6 feet, with a lithe build that seemed almost too fragile for this harsh environment. "Can you move?" Jasper asked, offering his hand. The alien woman nodded weakly, grasping his fingers with her own slender, 6-digit hand. As he helped her to her feet, Jasper's mind raced. Aliens weren't unheard of on Earth, but they were rare and usually kept to their own enclaves. Finding one discarded in a junkyard was unprecedented. "What's your name?" he asked, supporting her weight as she swayed unsteadily. "Lyra," she replied, her silver eyes scanning the horizon warily. Was Princess Lyra of the Celestial Concordat." Jasper let out a low whistle. "A princess, huh? Well, Your Highness, I hate to break it to you, but this ain't exactly a royal suite. What are you doing in a place like this?" Lyra's expression darkened, a flicker of pain crossing her delicate features. "I was betrayed. My own family, they saw me as a threat. Instead of a formal exile, they chose to dispose of me like garbage." The bitterness in her voice was palpable, and Jasper felt a surge of sympathy. He knew all too well what it was like to be discarded by those who should have cared. "Well, their loss is my gain, I suppose," Jasper said, trying to lighten the mood. "I'm Jasper, by the way. Jasper Novak. Professional scavenger and occasional rescuer of alien royalty." A small smile tugged at Lyra's lips, but it quickly faded as a distant rumble filled the air. Her eyes widened in fear. "They're coming," she whispered urgently. "The purifiers. My brother's elite guard. We have to go." Jasper didn't need to be told twice. He'd had enough run-ins with corporate security to know when it was time to make a hasty exit. "Can you run?" he asked, already guiding Lyra towards the rickety hoverbike he'd parked at the junkyard's edge. Lyra nodded, her strength seemingly returning with each passing moment. As they reached the bike, the rumble grew louder, accompanied by the whine of high-powered engines. "Hang on tight, Princess," Jasper said as he kick-started the bike. "Things are about to get interesting." Lyra wrapped her arms around his waist just as 3 sleek, black ships crested the horizon. Their smooth, predatory shapes were unlike any Earth vessel Jasper had ever seen. "Those would be the purifiers," Lyra confirmed, her voice tight with fear. Jasper gunned the engine, and the hoverbike shot forward, weaving between towering piles of junk. Behind them, energy weapons lit up the twilight sky, turning scrap metal into molten slag. "So, Your Highness," Jasper called over his shoulder as they narrowly avoided another blast, "any other family drama I should know about?" Despite the dire situation, Lyra let out a small laugh. "Oh, Jasper Novak, you have no idea what you've gotten yourself into." As they raced through the labyrinthine junkyard, plasma bolts raining down around them, Jasper couldn't help but grin. For the first time in years, he felt truly alive. Whatever came next, he knew his life would never be the same. The hoverbike burst out of the junkyard and onto the cracked asphalt of an ancient highway. Neoportland's towering skyline loomed before them, a forest of neon and steel reaching towards the darkening sky. "We need to disappear," Jasper shouted over the wind. "I know a place in the old town. It's not much, but it'll keep us off the grid for a while." Lyra nodded, her alien features softening with gratitude. "Thank you, Jasper. I owe you a debt I can never repay." Jasper chuckled, swerving to avoid a pothole. "Don't thank me yet, Princess. Something tells me this is just the beginning of our troubles." As they sped towards the glittering city, leaving the Purifier's ships momentarily confounded by the urban sprawl, both human and alien felt the first stirrings of an unlikely partnership. Neither could have predicted the adventures that lay ahead, nor the profound impact their chance meeting would have on the fate of two worlds. The hoverbike's engine hummed as Jasper guided it through the labyrinthine streets of Neoportland's old town. Crumbling brick buildings, relics of a bygone era, stood in stark contrast to the sleek skyscrapers of the city center. Holographic advertisements flickered weakly in grimy windows, their promises of a better life ringing hollow in this forgotten corner of the metropolis. Lyra clung tightly to Jasper, her alien senses overwhelmed by the cacophony of sights, sounds, and smells. The acrid tang of pollution mixed with the savory aromas wafting from street food vendors. Neon signs buzzed and hummed, casting multicolored shadows across faces both human and synthetic. Almost there, Jasper called over his shoulder, guiding the bike down a narrow alley. He brought the vehicle to a stop beside a nondescript door, its metal surface scarred and pitted with age. As they dismounted, Lyra swayed slightly, the adrenaline of their escape beginning to wear off. Jasper steadied her with a gentle hand. "Easy there, Princess. Let's get you inside before you collapse." He pressed his palm against a hidden scanner, and the door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Jasper ushered Lyra inside, glancing warily over his shoulder before following and securing the entrance behind them. The interior was a stark contrast to the gritty alley outside. While small and cluttered, the space was clean and filled with an eclectic mix of salvaged technology. Holographic displays flickered to life as they entered, bathing the room in a soft, blue glow. "Welcome to my humble abode," Jasper said, gesturing around with a hint of pride. "It's not much, but it's off the grid and shielded from most scans. We should be safe here, at least for now." Lyra took in her surroundings with wide-eyed curiosity. She ran a six-fingered hand over a bank of computers, marveling at the mix of cutting-edge tech and jury-rigged components. "This is impressive," she said softly. "You've built all this yourself?" Jasper shrugged, a lopsided grin on his face. "What can I say? I'm a man of many talents. Scavenging, tinkering, and now, apparently, rescuing alien royalty." His smile faded as he took in Lyra's bedraggled appearance. Her iridescent skin was dulled with grime, and her once regal clothing was torn and stained. "You should get cleaned up," he said, gesturing towards a small alcove. "Bathrooms through there. I'll see if I can find you some clothes that might fit." As Lyra disappeared into the bathroom, Jasper let out a long breath, running a hand through his unkempt hair. What had he gotten himself into? Harboring an alien fugitive was way above his pay grade. But something about Lyra's plight resonated with him. He knew what it was like to be cast aside, to be seen as disposable. While Lyra cleaned up, Jasper busied himself at one of his workstations, fingers flying over holographic keyboards as he scoured the net for any information on the celestial concordat. Most of what he found was vague propaganda, flowery descriptions of a benevolent alien empire that had graciously established trade relations with Earth. But between the lines, Jasper sensed something darker. He was so engrossed in his research that he didn't notice Lyra's return until she spoke. "Finding anything interesting?" Jasper turned, and for a moment, he forgot how to breathe. Cleaned up and dressed in a simple jumpsuit he'd scrounged up, Lyra was a vision of alien beauty. Her lavender skin seemed to glow from within, and her silver eyes sparkled with intelligence and curiosity. Jasper stammered, trying to regain his composure. "Not much concrete, to be honest. Your people keep a pretty tight lid on information. Care to fill in some blanks?" Lyra's expression grew somber as she settled into a chair across from him. "Where should I begin?" she asked, her musical voice tinged with sadness. "How about why your family decided to take out the trash?" Jasper winced at his own crude phrasing. "Sorry, that came out wrong. I meant..." Lyra held up a hand, a sad smile on her face. "No, you're not entirely wrong. To them, that's exactly what I am, refuse to be discarded." She took a deep breath before continuing. "The celestial concordat presents itself as a utopia, a perfect union of advanced worlds. But the reality is far darker. My father, the High Sovereign, rules with an iron fist, crushing any hint of dissent." Jasper leaned forward, captivated by her story. "And let me guess, you didn't agree with Daddy Dearest's methods?" Lyra nodded. "I believed our people deserved better. I spoke out against the injustices I saw, tried to advocate for reform. But my words fell on deaf ears. Worse, they were seen as a threat. So instead of listening to you, they decided to get rid of you," Jasper finished, his voice hard with anger. "My brother, Zarin, saw an opportunity," Lyra continued. "He convinced our father that I was too dangerous to be allowed to live, but that a public execution would make me a martyr. So they chose this." She gestured vaguely at their surroundings. Jasper's mind raced, piecing together the implications. "They dumped you on a backwater planet, figuring you'd either die or disappear into obscurity." Lyra nodded, her silver eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I never imagined my own family could be so cruel. I've lost everything, my home, my position, my people." Without thinking, Jasper reached out, covering her six-fingered hand with his own. "Not everything," he said softly. "You've still got your principles. And now, you've got me." Lyra looked up, surprise and gratitude warring on her delicate features. "You barely know me, Jasper. Why would you risk yourself for me?" Jasper grinned, some of his usual bravado returning. "What can I say? I'm a sucker for a good cause. Besides, sticking it to corrupt alien overlords sounds like a hell of a lot more fun than scrounging for spare parts in junkyards." A genuine smile spread across Lyra's face, transforming her already striking features into something truly breathtaking. "You're either very brave or very foolish, Jasper Novak." "Probably a bit of both," he admitted with a chuckle. "So, Your Highness, what's our next move?" Before Lyra could respond, an alarm blared from one of Jasper's computer banks. He swore, fingers flying over the keyboards. "Looks like your brother's boys didn't give up as easily as we'd hoped. I'm picking up energy signatures consistent with their ships, closing in fast." Lyra's eyes widened in fear. "The purifiers. They must have some way of tracking me." Jasper's mind raced, considering their options. "We need to move, and fast. I've got a few bolt holes scattered around the city, but they'll find those eventually. We need a more permanent solution." "What about your people's authorities?" Lyra asked. "Surely they wouldn't allow an alien force to operate on your world without permission?" Jasper let out a bitter laugh. Earth's governments sold out to the megacore decades ago. And the core? They're too busy kissing up to the concordat for trade deals to care about one alien refugee. He stood abruptly, moving to a hidden panel in the wall. It slid open to reveal an impressive array of weapons and gadgets. Looks like we're on our own, Princess. Hope you're ready for a fight. Lyra stood as well, her posture straightening as she drew on some inner reserve of strength. I've spent my life training to lead my people, she said, her voice filled with determination. I may have lost my throne, but I haven't lost my will to fight for what's right. Jasper couldn't help but feel a surge of admiration as he handed Lyra a sleek energy pistol. That's the spirit. Now, let's show these purifiers that Earth isn't as backwater as they think. As they gathered supplies and prepared to flee into the neon-drenched night, Jasper felt a familiar thrill of excitement. He'd always been a loner, content to live on the fringes of society. But now, with Lyra by his side and a noble cause to fight for, he felt truly alive for the first time in years. Little did either of them know that their impromptu partnership was about to spark a chain of events that would shake the very foundations of two worlds. As they stepped out into the chaos of Neo-Portland streets, the first chapter of their grand adventure was just beginning. Terence Callahan swirled the amber liquid in his glass, the city lights of New Shanghai reflecting in its depths. He watched the holographic advertisements flicker across the buildings opposite his penthouse, their cheerful slogans a stark contrast to the grim reality he knew lurked beneath the surface. The Caldwell artifact hummed softly against his chest, a silent observer to his thoughts. So, Terence said aloud, addressing the artifact, what's our angle here? We've got a princess, a price on her head, and a city full of shadows to hide in. The artifact's voice echoed in his mind, laced with its usual cynicism. Our angle, Callahan, is to extract maximum profit with minimum risk. This princess is a walking target. The longer we associate with her, the more likely we are to end up as collateral damage. Terence took a long sip of his drink, ignoring the artifact's warnings. Maybe. But something tells me this situation is more complicated than a simple royal squabble. Besides, I'm curious. What's so special about her bloodline that her own family wants her dead? Curiosity killed the cat, the artifact retorted. And in your case, it will likely get you incinerated by a plasma rifle. Maybe, Terence conceded with a shrug. But where's the fun in playing it safe? A soft chime announced Freya's arrival. Terence turned to see her descending the spiral staircase, clad in a simple, dark gray jumpsuit he'd found in the guest room. The clothing was several sizes too large, but she wore it with an effortless grace that belied her current circumstances. Thank you, she said, her silver eyes meeting his. For the clothes, and for everything. Don't mention it, Princess, Terence replied, offering her a seat. Just call me Terence. Or Smoke, if you prefer. Everyone else does. Freya smiled faintly. Smoke it is, then. And you can call me Freya. Terence nodded, gesturing towards a small table laden with snacks and drinks. Help yourself. Now, about those royal secrets. Freya hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. My mother, she wasn't of the same species as my father. She was a Xylosian, a race known for their psionic abilities. Terence raised an eyebrow. Psionics, huh? So, you're telling me you've got mind powers? Freya shook her head. Not exactly. Xylosians are empaths. They can sense and manipulate emotions. My mother was one of the most powerful empaths in the galaxy. And your brother didn't like that? Terence guessed. Zarin saw my Xylosian heritage as a weakness, Freya explained. He believed that only those of pure celestial blood were fit to rule. He feared that my empathic abilities would make me susceptible to manipulation, or worse, that I would use them to control others. So, he decided to eliminate the competition, Terence concluded. Charming. He's always been ambitious, Freya said, her voice tinged with sadness. But I never thought he was capable of such cruelty. People are capable of anything, Princess, Terence said, his tone hardening. Especially when power is involved. He paused, considering their options. Okay, so we know your brother wants you dead. We know he's got the resources to hunt you down anywhere in the galaxy. And we know you've got a unique set of skills that he's afraid of. What we don't know is how to stop him. I need to reach out to my allies, Freya said, her eyes narrowing. There are members of the Concordat Council who believe in justice and equality. If I can get word to them, they might be able to intervene. And how do you propose we do that? Terence asked. Last time I checked, we were dodging plasma bolts in a junkyard. Contacting interstellar politicians isn't exactly on my list of usual activities. I know a way, Freya said, her voice softening. There's a hidden network of Xylosian empaths scattered throughout the galaxy. They use their abilities to communicate with each other, sharing information and providing support. So, you want to tap into the psychic internet? Terence summarized. Sounds complicated. It is, Freya admitted. But it's our best chance. There's a small community of Xylosians here on Earth, hidden in the old districts of Neo-Portland. If we can find them, they might be able to help me send a message. Terence swirled his drink again, considering the risks. All right, Princess, he said finally. Let's go find some psychics. The old districts of Neo-Portland were a labyrinth of narrow streets and crumbling buildings, a stark contrast to the gleaming skyscrapers of the city center. Neon signs flickered erratically, casting long shadows that danced and writhed like restless spirits. The air was thick with the smells of cheap food, exhaust fumes, and something else, something that Terence couldn't quite place. This place gives me the creeps, he muttered, adjusting the ancient pendant around his neck. Are you picking up anything, Caldwell? A pervasive sense of despair and desperation, the artifact replied. And a faint undercurrent of psychic energy. Your princess is on the right track. Terence and Freya moved through the crowded streets, their senses on high alert. Terence kept his hand close to his stunner, his eyes constantly scanning for any sign of trouble. Freya, on the other hand, seemed to be guided by something else, an inner compass that led her through the maze of alleys and backstreets. They're close, she murmured, her silver eyes glowing faintly. I can feel their presence, like a faint hum in the back of my mind. After several hours of searching, Freya led them to a dilapidated building tucked away in a forgotten corner of the district. The building's facade was crumbling, its windows boarded up, but a faint light flickered from within. This is it, Freya said, her voice barely above a whisper. The Xylosian Enclave. Terence approached the building cautiously, pressing his ear against the door. He could hear faint chanting coming from within, a rhythmic drone that seemed to vibrate through the very walls. Ready, Princess? He asked, drawing his stunner. Freya nodded, taking a deep breath. Let's do this. Terence kicked the door open, bursting into the building with his stunner raised. The scene that greeted him was both strange and unsettling. A group of Xylosians, their lavender skin shimmering in the dim light, sat in a circle, their eyes closed in meditation. Candles flickered around them, casting eerie shadows across their faces. In the center of the circle, a single Xylosian woman stood, her arms raised towards the ceiling, her body swaying gently. The chanting stopped abruptly as the Xylosians turned to face the intruders, their silver eyes wide with surprise and fear. Who are you? The woman in the center demanded, her voice trembling slightly. What do you want? We mean you no harm, Freya said, stepping forward. I am Freya, daughter of the High Sovereign and the Xylosian empath, Lyra. I need your help. The woman's eyes widened in recognition. Freya. But, we heard you were dead. My brother attempted to have me assassinated, Freya explained. I escaped, but I need to contact my allies on the Concordat Council. I believe Zarin is planning something that could threaten the entire galaxy. The woman hesitated for a moment, then nodded slowly. Terence Callahan swirled the amber liquid in his glass, the holographic cityscape of Neo-Shanghai reflecting in its depths. The Caldwell artifact hummed softly against his chest, a constant, if unwelcome, companion. Freya had been upstairs for over an hour, and the silence was starting to get to him. He took another swig of the aged whiskey, the burn of familiar comfort. "So, Caldwell," Terence murmured, addressing the pendant, "what's the play here? She gets cleaned up, tells us her sob story, and then what? We overthrow an interstellar empire? Realistically, we get paid," the artifact responded dryly. "Handsomely, if she's to be believed. Royal families tend to have resources. But I wouldn't count on overthrowing anything larger than a particularly stubborn trash compactor." Terence chuckled, the sound hollow even to his own ears. "Always the optimist, aren't you?" "Realist," the artifact corrected. "There's a difference. Optimism gets you killed. Realism keeps you breathing, and occasionally, very, very rich." A soft footfall on the spiral staircase announced Freya's return. Terence turned to see her descending, clad in one of his spare silk dressing gowns. It was several sizes too large, but she wore it with an innate grace that somehow made it look like it belonged. The violet of her skin seemed to shimmer in the soft light of the penthouse, and her silver eyes held a newfound determination. "Thank you, Terence," she said, her voice soft. "For everything. The clothes, the safety, the help." "Smoke," Terence corrected, offering her a seat by the panoramic window. "And don't mention it. I've always had a soft spot for damsels in distress, especially the ones with royal bloodlines." Freya managed a small smile. "I hardly feel like a damsel in distress. More like a fugitive." Terence shrugged. "Details, details. So, Princess," he continued, leaning back in his chair, "you mentioned a brother, a family betrayal, and a rather unpleasant disposal method. Care to elaborate?" Freya took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on the glittering cityscape below. "Zarin, he always craved power. He resented my mother's Xylosian heritage, saw it as a taint on the royal bloodline. He believed that only those of pure celestial descent were fit to rule." "Sounds like a real charmer," Terence deadpanned. "He's ruthless," Freya continued, her voice trembling slightly. "He convinced my father that I was a threat, that my empathy made me vulnerable to manipulation. He exaggerated my differences." "Differences?" Terence prompted. "Xylosians are empaths," Freya explained. "We can sense and influence emotions. Zarin painted that as a dangerous ability, a tool for control. He feared I would use it to usurp him, to sway the council against him. So, he decided to eliminate the competition," Terence summarized. "Textbook sibling rivalry." Freya closed her eyes for a moment, her face etched with pain. "I never thought he was capable of such cruelty. To cast me aside like garbage." Terence remained silent, letting her process the emotions. He knew what it was like to be betrayed by family, to be cast out into the cold. He took a long drag from his ever-present cigar, the smoke swirling around him in a comforting cloud. "All right, Princess," he said finally, his voice softening. "So, we know your brother wants you dead. We know he's got the resources to hunt you down. And we know you've got a unique skill set. What we need is a plan. I need to contact the Concordat Council," Freya said, her voice regaining its strength. "There are members who are loyal to the principles of justice and equality. If I can reach them, they might be able to intervene." "Easier said than done," Terence pointed out. "We're talking about interstellar communication. We're not exactly next door to the celestial Concordat. And I doubt your brother is going to let us waltz into the nearest spaceport and book a flight." "There's another way," Freya said, her silver eyes gleaming with determination. "The Xylosian network. A hidden web of empaths scattered across the galaxy. They use their abilities to communicate, to share information, to offer support. A psychic internet? Terence raised an eyebrow. Sounds risky. It is, Freya admitted. But it's our best chance. There's a small enclave of Xylosians here on Earth, hidden in the old districts of Neo-Portland. If we can find them, they might be able to help me send a message. Terence swirled his drink again, the ice clinking softly against the glass. He considered the risks. Dealing with psychics was always a gamble. They were unpredictable, often unstable. But Freya was right. It was their best lead. "All right, Princess," he said, his voice laced with a hint of resignation. "Let's go find some mind readers." The Caldwell artifact stirred against his chest. "Callahan, I strongly advise against this. Xylosians are notorious for their emotional instability. Getting involved with them is asking for trouble." "Relax, Caldwell," Terence muttered. "I've dealt with worse. Besides," he added with a grin, "a little chaos never hurt anyone." The artifact sighed, a mental sound that echoed in Terence's mind. Famous last words. Terence stubbed out his cigar, the embers glowing like dying stars. "Let's get going, Princess. The sooner we find these psychics, the sooner we can get you back to your royal squabble, and the sooner I can get back to my perfectly ordered, chaos-free life." Freya smiled, a genuine, warm smile that lit up her face. "Somehow, I doubt your life will ever be chaos-free again, Terence Callahan." As they prepared to leave the penthouse, Terence couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. He was a creature of habit, a man who thrived on routine. But every now and then, he needed a jolt, a spark of excitement to break the monotony. And a fugitive alien princess, a psychic network, and a ruthless brother bent on galactic domination, well, that certainly qualified. He just hoped he wouldn't regret it. Professor Elara Vance's laboratory was a symphony of controlled chaos. Wires snaked across the floor like metallic vines, holographic projections flickered with arcane symbols, and the air hummed with the barely contained energy of experimental technology. Empty nutrient paste containers and half-disassembled droids littered every surface, a testament to Elara's relentless pursuit of scientific discovery. Elara herself, a whirlwind of energy in her late 40s, with perpetually frazzled auburn hair and mismatched goggles perched on her forehead, danced between workstations, muttering to herself as she adjusted dials and tweaked connections. She was a genius, bordering on mad, but undeniably brilliant. The sudden chime of the lab's antiquated doorbell made her jump. "Blast it all," she exclaimed, nearly dropping a delicate quantum resonator. "Who in their right mind uses a doorbell in this day and age?" She stomped towards the entrance, muttering about the audacity of interrupting her research. When she yanked the door open, she found Terence Callahan standing there, an unfamiliar lavender-skinned woman by his side. "Can I help you?" Elara asked, her tone impatient. "I'm rather in the middle of deciphering the harmonic resonance of subatomic particles, and I haven't got all day." "We need your help, Professor Vance," Terence said, his voice serious. "This is Freya, and she's in trouble." Elara raised an eyebrow, taking in Freya's exotic appearance. "Trouble, you say? Well, I suppose that's a relative term. My idea of trouble is a recalcitrant neutrino." "What sort of trouble are we talking about?" "Galactic-scale trouble," Terence replied. "Freya is a princess from the Celestial Concordat, and her brother is trying to have her killed." Elara blinked, her initial skepticism giving way to a spark of curiosity. "A princess, you say? And galactic intrigue? This is getting interesting. Come in, come in. Don't just stand there gawking. I haven't had a good princess in my lab since, well, never, actually." She ushered them inside, her eyes darting between Freya and Terence with undisguised interest. "So, tell me everything. Start from the beginning. And try to keep the technobabble to a minimum. I prefer my science to be at least somewhat comprehensible, even when it's completely bonkers. Terence recounted the events of the past few days, from Freya's arrival on Earth to their narrow escape from the cleaners. Elara listened intently, occasionally interjecting with questions and observations. So, your brother is a power-hungry maniac with a penchant for attempted assassination, she summarized when Terence was finished. And you believe he's planning something that could threaten the entire galaxy. Fascinating. We need to contact the Concordat Council, Freya said, her voice urgent. But we don't know how. My brother has blocked all conventional communication channels. Elara stroked her chin thoughtfully. Conventional channels, eh? Well, that's no fun. We need something unconventional. Something quantum. She turned to a workstation dominated by a massive, intricate device that resembled a cross between a particle accelerator and a musical instrument. This, she announced proudly, is the Quantum Entanglement Communicator. Or, as I like to call it, the QEC. What does it do? Terence asked, his voice wary. It exploits the principles of quantum entanglement to transmit information instantaneously, regardless of distance, Elara explained, her eyes gleaming with excitement. In theory, it could allow us to communicate with anyone, anywhere in the galaxy, without being detected. In theory? Terence repeated, his skepticism evident. Well, there are a few, minor, complications, Elara admitted. The QEC is still experimental. It's only been tested over short distances, and the signal is unstable, to say the least. But with a little tweaking, and a healthy dose of luck, it might just work. Do we have a choice? Freya asked, her expression determined. Elara grinned. I like your attitude, princess. All right, let's get to work. For the next several hours, Elara, Terence, and Freya worked tirelessly in the lab, adjusting the QEC and calibrating its complex systems. Elara explained the science behind the device, peppering her explanations with jargon and equations that left Terence thoroughly confused. Freya, however, seemed to grasp the concepts with surprising ease. Your empathic abilities must be enhancing your understanding of quantum mechanics, Elara mused. Fascinating. I'll have to study that further. As they worked, Terence couldn't help but admire Freya's resilience and determination. Despite everything she had been through, she remained focused and unwavering in her resolve. He found himself increasingly drawn to her, not just because of her beauty, but because of her strength of character. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Elara announced that the QEC was ready. All right, princess, she said, her voice filled with nervous excitement. Time to see if this contraption actually works. Freya stepped up to the device, placing her hands on the designated sensors. Elara activated the QEC, and the lab filled with a low, humming sound. Holographic displays flickered wildly, and the air crackled with energy. Concentrate, princess, Elara instructed. Focus on the council. Send them a message. Tell them what's happening. Freya closed her eyes, her brow furrowed in concentration. A faint glow emanated from her skin, and her silver eyes shimmered with an inner light. Suddenly, the QEC sputtered and coughed, its holographic displays going haywire. Sparks flew from the device, and the humming sound intensified into a deafening roar. Something's wrong. Elara shouted over the noise. The signal is destabilizing. Terence watched in alarm as Freya's body began to tremble. Her face was contorted in pain, and her silver eyes were wide with terror. Freya, he cried, reaching out to steady her. What's happening? He's blocking me. Freya gasped, her voice strained. Zarin, he's interfering with the signal. Elara swore under her breath. He must have some sort of countermeasure. A psychic dampener, or something similar. We have to stop him. Freya cried. If he blocks the message, the council will never know what he's planning. I have an idea, Terence said, his mind racing. Caldwell, he muttered to the pendant around his neck, can you amplify Freya's signal? Can you break through Zaren's interference? The artifact hesitated for a moment, then responded, it's risky, Callahan. Amplifying psychic energy can have unpredictable consequences. But if it's the only way. Do it, Terence said, his voice firm. A surge of power coursed through Terence's body, emanating from the Caldwell artifact. The pendant glowed with an intense light, and the air around him crackled with energy. He reached out and placed his hand on Freya's shoulder, channeling the artifact's power into her. Focus, Freya, he said, his voice resonating with an otherworldly energy. I'm with you. We can break through this. Freya's eyes widened as the power surged through her. She took a deep breath, her expression hardening with determination. Together, they focused their combined energies on the QEC, pushing the device to its limits. The humming sound intensified, the holographic displays stabilized, and a clear signal emerged. We've done it. Ilara exclaimed, her voice filled with triumph. The message is going through. But their victory was short-lived. Suddenly, the lab doors burst open, and a squad of heavily armed soldiers stormed inside. Freeze, their leader shouted, aiming his weapon at Terence, Freya, and Ilara. You're all under arrest. Zaren had found them. And their desperate attempt to contact the council had just turned into a deadly trap.